allocating resources to the right unit is quite important, especially because it takes a lot of materials for you to get a unit all the way to level 60. It's even worse for free-to-play players because getting these materials will cost a lot of time and berries that you could be using on disc farming and clearing the endgame content. So either you are a new player or someone looking to upgrade some A rank units, in this video we're going over all the A rank units available in the game so you can get an idea of which units are worth your investment. So let's start with Anby, which is the only A rank stunner in the game. It's a free unit and a lot of players probably still use her because either they didn't get lucky with some limited stunner pulls or didn't manage to get one of the standard S rank stunners. But truth be told, Anby is quite underwhelming. Especially against aggressive enemies, you'll find it really hard to maximize your stun potential. And that's because of all the combo requirements you need to do in order to benefit from her core skill. Not to mention that all other stunners will provide some sort of extra utility besides stunning the enemy. Well, Anby won't provide anything at all and also requires a lot of field time and mastery to deal some decent amount of days on the enemy. While DPS units lose a lot of damage by not upgrading them all the way to level 60, stunners only lose a tiny bit of days potential, so honestly speaking, don't spend too much resources on Anby. It's way better for you to save some pulls and get a limited stunner like Chinyi, which is quite universal, or even use your selector on Koleda from the standard units. If you don't feel like getting these units, then just upgrade Anby at most to level 50, because going all the way to level 60 will only give you less than 5% increase in your day's potential. So honestly, not worth it. Next up, we have Anton, which used to be our electric DPS unit. However, with Harumasa release and the fact he's been given for free, a lot of players will invest their resources on Harumasa instead of Anton, which might not be the best choice. That's because Harumasa's learning curve is way harder than Anton. While Anton is pretty much just hitting down the enemy during your burst mode, Harumasa requires you a bit of knowledge on his rotation and combos in order to maximize your damage. For Anton, you just need to keep the enemy shocked in order to benefit from his additional ability. So usually players have been using Anton with Grace since the first patch of the game, and later with Chinyi for the huge stun multiplier she can provide. Grace can easily trigger shock on enemies and let Anton deal some damage while the shock is running. But then this also means that you're looking for another S rank unit that can enable Anton. So as you can see, it will require a lot of investment, and Harumasa, even though Harumasa is harder to play, he can easily fit in more free-to-play team compositions. Only invest in Anton if you really like the character or none of the other electric units appeal to you, and you are in need of an electric DPS. The next unit in this list is Ben, which honestly is quite hard to talk about. Ben is a defender unit, and while some players may think that shield is a skill issue or that's everything Ben's going to offer for you, well, Ben can actually deal some damage if you parry enemy attacks using your EX special. Ben can also deal some daze to the enemies and apply a team-wide shield that also gives crit rate if you activate his additional ability. But the main issue on Ben is the fact that everything on him is insanely slow. Not to mention that as a general support unit, everything he's going to do, someone else can do better. So not everyone will like playing him, but the utility he offers and the extra damage is quite interesting. For example, one thing that I still use up to today is Piper, Ben, and Lucy, and this thing actually deals some interesting damage once you invest some resources in it. And Ben can offer some extra protection for your squad, which Piper appreciates quite a lot. If you plan to use him for utility, you don't need to level up all the way to level 60, and only go for it in case you want some extra damage from him. Now let's talk about Billy, which is given for free, and trust me, a lot of players actually sleep on his potential. If you take a look on shield defense data on Pridewind, you're going to see that Billy can hit some faster clears than Nekomata. So honestly, really good character once you learn some tricks around his crouching stance. I'm not diving too deep into this mechanic, but basically speaking, once you enter the crouching stance, you get a damage bonus and you can use it on other things besides his basic attack, including his ultimate, for example. So once you master this mechanic and you can use the extra damage to the fullest, well, you can hit some nasty damage numbers. Even though the competition on the physical DPS slot is quite high, Billy is a solid pick for those who like the character. So feel free to invest in him because it's really worth it. Moving forward, we have Corin, which is also a physical DPS unit. And Corin plays a similar role to Billy, the burst DPS style. However, Billy can actually deal some decent sustained DPS, while Corin is all about hitting stunned enemies. That's because her additional ability gives increased damage against stunned enemies. So basically speaking, you want Corin to stay in the background and leave a stunner on the field, so you can hit the stun window as fast as possible and spend all your resources on the enemy to deal the maximum possible damage. However, she relies quite a lot on energy and decibels, and since you're not fielding her, you can end up hitting some stun windows without enough resources to deal damage. Honestly, in my opinion, Billy is better than Corin for the physical DPS slot, and I only recommend leveling her up in case you really like the character. Next up we have Lucy, which is honestly one of the best supers units in the game. She's super versatile and offers attack buffs for your whole squad, while also dealing a bit of damage herself. Sadly, you can't scale a lot of her summons damage because they only get her initial stats, which means other buffs won't apply to them unless specified. Super simple to play and requires little to no field time, so honestly, there's no reason for you to not level up your Lucy. Being a support unit, if you don't care for her damage contribution, you also don't need to level her up all the way to level 60. And you can also save some resources because her core skill will only increase the damage of your summons. To maximize her attack buff, all you need to do is level up her EX special. And coming right next, there's Nicole, who is also one of the best supers in the game for now. But unlike Lucy, Nicole requires a bit of a setup before maximizing your DPS potential. Even though some of her buffs are ether only related, we have a lot of utility in the form of grouping enemies and defense threat. Defense threat is a bit different from penetration because penetration is a stat on your agent and defense threat is a debuff on the enemy. This has some interesting applications when it comes to anomaly damage, but that's going to be quite a long explanation, so I'm going to leave 2 videos linked in the top right corner in case you want to understand how anomaly and penetration works in this game. The main issue on Nicole is the fact that defense threat debuff lasts for just a couple of seconds, so you need to keep track of the energy field uptime and refresh before bursts of damage. Outside of it, Nicole's field time is really minimal and she has the fastest chain attack in the game. So even though you need to refresh the buff, she's not going to steal field time from your DPS unit. Highly recommend using her, and once again, you don't need to invest a lot of resources on her unless you plan to maximize her core for maximum support potential. Always focus on your DPS units first before investing spare resources on utility units. Now we're back to the physical DPS competition with Piper, the only A-rank anomaly unit in the game. Unlike both Billy and Corin, Piper won't scale with crit stats, instead she scales with attack, anomaly proficiency, and anomaly mastery. In case you don't know, most of your damage will come from anomaly triggers, and these won't scale with your skill level, so overall, Piper is quite cheap for you to build. And what I find really interesting about Piper's kit is the fact that she still provides some utility for your team even though she's a DPS unit. Her additional ability will increase the damage of your whole squad by 18%. It is not much, I know, but it's still a great addition for double DPS setups and maximizing everyone's damage. While Piper relies a lot on her EX special, she has a really great moveset that offers a lot of invulnerability frames for her. However, keep in mind that it's not as easy as it seems to play Piper, because she gets quite vulnerable while spinning, and failing to manage her power stacks will lead to DPS loss. If you own some of her mindscapes, I would highly recommend you to invest in Piper in case you need an anomaly unit. Otherwise, it's up to you, especially if you're already aiming for another limited anomaly unit. Next up we have Seth, which is another defender unit, but this time, unlike Ben, he provides a lot of buffs for anomaly related units. Pretty much the only anomaly super in the game for now, because he provides an anomaly proficiency boost and build up increase for your squad. Sadly, Seth's main weakness is the fact that he mostly buffs a single unit in your team. This isn't a problem for a Jane team, for example, because she's usually being played as the only DPS on the team. But for these other team compositions, which have 2 different anomaly units, Seth is not going to perform that well. In this case, Lucy is the better pick, because attack buff goes for the whole squad. But if you plan to play around a single anomaly carry, Seth is a huge pick and will increase your DPS potential by quite a lot. He's quite versatile when it comes to builds, but since he has some interesting build up and his shield scales with his attack, increasing his level to 60 is a good idea. And finally, let's talk about Slow-kaku. For those who follow the channel, you probably already know that I'm not a huge fan of Slow-kaku's gameplay, but I'm going to leave the bias aside and do a proper review of Slow-kaku. She has one of the highest attack buffs in the game and also offers a lot of damage potential for ice-related units. Her additional ability increases ice damage by 20%, and Mindscapes will also give a buff that ignores 10% of the enemy's ice resistance. If you go all the way to Mindscape 6, you can even get some DPS potential on Slow-kaku, and honestly her DPS potential is quite interesting. What I don't like about her is the fact that her animations are quite long and will steal some field time from your DPS units. Not using her chain attack, ultimate, and using only the quick version of Fly the Flag will cut down some of her field time. Another thing is that even though Slow-kaku's attack buff is really huge, it's a single target buff. So for double DPS setups, trying to manage buffs on both units can be quite time demanding, but for hyper carry teams, since there's only a single unit for you to buff, it's quite easy to manage and keep the attack buff with 100% uptime. She has some interesting ice build-up on her EX special that even allows you to freeze and trigger anomalies on the enemy. Honestly speaking, she's a must if you're playing with an ice DPS unit. In this case, we're talking about Ellen and Miyabi, but for other DPS units, the damage potential will be smaller, and other supports can offer some smaller buffs, but without taking field time from your DPS unit. It comes down to preference, because Lucy offers 400 less attack than Slow-kaku, but with all the attack buffs you can find pretty much everywhere, 400 attack isn't a huge DPS difference. And this wraps up every A rank unit in the game, and I really hope this video could help you understand and decide where you're going to allocate some of your resources. And I'm going to leave some extra tips before closing the video. DPS units are the one you need to focus most of your resources because your final damage scales with your current level. Days and other utilities won't scale, so leveling up DPS units to 60 is your #1 priority. This is even more important for anomaly units because anomaly has double scaling on your current level. Most core skills falls down on the scaling after the core C. Some units get linear increases on every core level, but some other units get front-loaded increase on the first 3 levels, and it falls down from core C onward. So most of the time, leveling up only to core C is a good middle ground and is more than enough for most units. Getting Mindscapes on any A rank unit will increase their potential, but I don't recommend you pulling unlimited banners just because of A rank units. Take things slowly and play the game at your own pace. If you have any questions, remember that you can join the Discord server and ask over there and also chat with the community. Link is down in the description, and as usual, thanks for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in my next video.